Okay, so we are live. Hello friends, I Joyashree Dey, project lead for the Story Project 13 by www.tellmeastory.biz. Welcome you to the third episode of Gender Stereotyping series. I am privileged to have with us today Gayathri Sampath, Nazneen Kachwala and Stella Biswas this evening, and we are going to discuss gender stereotyping in religion. Tell Me Your Story calls for submission on the writing prompt Gender Stereotyping. Registration are also open for the masterclass on the social media strategy for new or aspiring writers. Let me begin with introducing the panelists in this evening. So first the panelist is Dr. Gayathri Sampath. She is a multifaceted personality. She is an educator, leadership coach, mentor and writer. Apart from the world of the corporate strategy where she has worked for close to 3 decades, she is interested in the ancient history, epics, and mythology. A lifelong reader, she started writing fiction recently and has published several short stories in various critically acclaimed anthologies. She is currently working on a screenplay and a novel. Ma'am, welcome in this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Joyce.
Second panelist in today's evening is Nazneen Kachwal. She is an engineer who likes to write. Her stories are published in the Times of India, the Optimist Citizen newspaper, Madras Courier, and ebook anthologies by TMYS. She founded Winged Fables, a creative platform for artists, book lovers, and social innovators in 2018. Nazneen works on independent inventive projects, documents constructive stories on her website, interviews novel minds to create a human library, and has a paper published in her name with the UNESCO BRICS nation. Besides, she has a penchant for astrophysics and yoga. Ma'am, welcome to this evening.
Thank you very much.
And our third panelist is Dr. Stella Biswas. She is an assistant professor in the Department of Literature and Languages at SRM University, Andhra Pradesh. Previously, she taught UG and PG students at the Department of English, Sarojini Naidu College for Women, Kolkata. She completed her PhD from the Center for Comparative Literature and Translation Studies, Central University of Gujarat, Gandhinagar. Her research interests include juvenile literature, pedagogy, speculative fiction, post-colonial studies, and sexuality and gender studies. She has presented and published papers on South Asian children's literature internationally. Stella ma'am, welcome in this evening.
Thank you for having me, Joyashree.
So we can start now with this panel that gender stereotyping in religion, and I want to pose my first question to every panelist. My first question to all of you is: how do you perceive the impact of gender stereotype within religious context? Would you like to share a personal story or any specific discomfort that you think this stereotype pose for individuals and communities? First, Gayatri ma'am, tell me your story.
So, I think my first encounter with gender stereotypes is when I gave birth. Okay, and it was a difficult birth. I was in a lot of pain. But when it comes to christening of the child, then the woman is forgotten because during the christening, it's only the father who takes precedence. The mother is just there to complete the picture of the family. And it was possibly my first encounter where I felt that something was not right. Why was the role of the mother subjugated? Because she's the one who's gone through the birth ordeal. Why was that sidelined in favor of the father? Okay, so that was my first ordeal. I don't think I rebelled against it at that point in time, but it was something that stayed with me and continues to bother me even now.
Naseem ma'am, how do you perceive this impact on your life? Is there
Yeah,
any instance?
yeah, of course. So, Joyashree and everyone, I actually grew up with my brother, and my there's not much age difference between me and my brother. We are just 1.5 years apart. I am the elder one; he's the younger one. So both of us, fortunately, we grew up as equals. We both of us had equal opportunities. Um, I would not be wrong in saying that I always ended up getting a little more than my brother. And our educations were similar. We had We could make our choices, but as we grew up, um, somewhere there was a kind of conditioning, and I knew through my parents, through my family, that I have to leave this family and go elsewhere. There will be a time, an age where I will have to leave this house and go to a different house, live with different people, and adjust to their ways of life. So I think this was a conditioning. I don't know if I was uncomfortable with it, because that's how probably our society works. But that was like my first probably instance of gender stereotyping, as I can say.
Okay, so we can say that it starts with the very grassroots level, that is the family, from two of the panelists. And so, what do you think, Stella ma'am? How does
So
this impact?
I come from a, traditional Catholic Christian background. Uh, I have not really faced any stereotypical, so to speak, discrimination as such when it comes to my family life or my social life. But there are definitely a few instances that I've noticed in, my faith and in various other traditions that people follow in Catholicism all across the world that I definitely have certain problems with. Uh, there are common stereotypes which are, historically associated with Catholic Christianity, which have remained till date and which are very much problematic when it comes to gender roles, subjectivities, and the agency of women. When it comes to gender roles and worship, one finds that traditional Catholicism often assigns specific roles to men and women when it comes to worship. Men are typically seen as the leaders in the church hierarchy, including the priests, the bishops, and even the pope. While women are often limited to supporting, roles such as nuns or the other lay members of the congregation who, attends the service or the mass regularly. The Catholic Church also has a very strong emphasis on the virginity and the purity of women, especially when it comes to Catholic Christianity. You will see the veneration of this icon of the Virgin Mary. So such emphasis, I feel, is it. Of course, it has contributed to stereotypes that has led to idealizing women as the pure, chaste, and they are expected to be submissive creatures in a certain sense. Then women are also often stereotyped as caregivers or nurturers within Catholicism, and this the emphasis on motherhood is again exemplified by the icon of Mary, the mother of Jesus. So this stereotype, I feel, can only sort of reinforce traditional gender roles, because women then are expected to prioritize family life or other domestic responsibilities that are placed on their shoulders. And also, one will find that despite the presence of certain influential female figures in Catholic history, such as various saints or female theologians, the institutional hierarchy of the church has been predominantly male. This can, I feel, only perpetuate these stereotypes which associate the concepts of authority and decision making with masculinity. uh, if you have had a reading of the Bible, I mean, if you have gone through the Bible, you will find that there are several stories of women who have been wronged or who have faced injustice. And these are the women who are venerated for centuries across. And much as they highlight the themes of oppression, mistreatment, and the struggles for justice that these women had to go through, but I feel it is also important to remember that the Catholic Church, of course, has undergone several changes and reforms over time, thereby leading to shifts in how gender is perceived and sort of addressed within the community.
Thank you, ma'am, for your feedback on this question. Um, Next, I will go to Gayatri ma'am to you. And my question is to you. That is again a very sensitive topic. That is, in India, most temples open to general public are managed by priests, not priestesses. However, today we hear about female wedding priest and female qazi. So, how do you perceive the portrayal of gender roles in religion influencing the social norms of today?
So, yeah, this is, as you rightly said, a very sensitive topic because, as Stella was also mentioning earlier, it does question a lot of patriarchal roles. Okay. Uh, Something that I would like to mention here is that much of what we see today is based on an interpretation of the texts. Okay, these stereotypes have come to be, and the jury is out on whether they were prescribed by the gods in our heaven above, or they have been prescribed by people who interpreted what they meant as norms for society. Okay. Uh, there are many controversial topics about what is a role that women can assume or the powers that women can assume when it comes to many religious functions. Women assuming responsibility for performing any solemnization functions is something still which is viewed as novel. I won't say it's taboo anymore, but it's still viewed as novel. It is viewed as challenging certain established norms. But one thing which still continues to evade becoming mainstream is that of women's participation in death rituals. Increasingly, in a society where uh, there is maybe just one or two children per family, okay, prescribed stereotypes about saying that it's only the male of the family who has the right to perform certain tasks or purification rituals or death rituals does limit the role that women can play in this. And it's also a little uh, limiting in the sense of the role they play in their families in the larger social structure. So both birth and death rituals, but I started with the birth ritual and I'd also like to draw focus to the death ritual, is that these are where the stereotypes come in, saying that a ritual performed by a woman does not guarantee moksha or nirvana. Okay. So the outcome is related to the gender, which is a complete parody of what these rituals are supposed to be.
Yes, ma'am, absolutely. The limiting of women as the like minority gender is in all religion. So, shifting to a different perspective, I'm going to now Nazneen ma'am. Ma'am, education levels vary a great deal by religion. So, across all the major religious groups, men receive more years of schooling on average than women. Even in the grassroots level, parents are reluctant to send their girls to madrasas, fearing for their safety. Would you like to tell us a holy story from Islamic faith that celebrates women's wisdom specifically?
Um, yeah, I think as far as I have read the Islamic texts and the Holy Book Quran, and also from the Hadith, there are many stories that actually celebrate women wisdom. But in the context of our discussion, I would just like to portray the character of one woman. Her name is Khadija, and she is the first wife of Prophet Muhammad. Now, she was a Quraysh businesswoman of her tribe, and she had unparalleled business acumen, and her wealth probably surpassed the wealth of the entire Quraysh tribe at that point in time. In fact, she was the one who hired Prophet Muhammad to work for one of her caravans, and because of Prophet Muhammad's skills and business tactics and human relation, he was able to fetch a lot more profit than that was anticipated. So she was quite impressed by Prophet Muhammad at that time, and actually it was she who sent a marriage proposal to the Prophet, and her age at that time was 40 years old, and Prophet was 25 years of age. And it is also said that Prophet Muhammad never married until Khadija was alive. And he also didn't remarry 10 years until 10 years of her death. They were perfect companions, perfect couple, as we say in today's time. And in this one short character portrayal, it's not a story but just a portrayal of a character, we see that so many stereotypes are that exist today have been broken, and this is like a more than 1400-year-old story.
Your answer reminds me of that very famous quote that is, behind every successful man there is not one, also many women's role.
Yeah.
If
And
you,
in fact, she was the first person to accept Islam after the prophethood was attained. So she was the one, yeah.
thank you, ma'am. Uh, Now I'll go to you, ma'am, Stella, ma'am. Uh, Again, this question also carries some sensitive issues that we are dealing today. That nowadays protest over hate curbs in school, colleges, workplace have gained international attention. Hate coverings are relatively common among Indian women, especially those who are older, married, conservative, and sometimes from lower economic background. How do you observe the social perception related to hate curbs? Since one school talks about freedom of expression and another points out at the childhood conditioning.
This ongoing debate over headscarves in schools, colleges, and workplaces reflects broader, social perceptions and cultural norms surrounding religious expression, gender roles, and individual freedom. While on the one hand, one perspective emphasizes the importance of freedom of expression and religious freedom, and there are advocates who argue that individuals should have the right to express their religious beliefs through clothing, including wearing headscarves, without facing discrimination or restrictions. They view headscarves as symbols of religious identity and personal choice. And for some, wearing a headscarf is a symbol of empowerment and autonomy for women. They argue that women should have the right to choose whether or not to wear a headscarf, and that forcing women to remove their headscarves within any space, be it professional or educational, can be seen as oppressive and patriarchal. Again, if you look at certain, a few secular societal setups, there might be debates about the role of religion within public institutions. So some may argue that schools, colleges, and workplaces should maintain a neutral stance on religion and not really allow overt displays of religious symbols, including headscarves. So these people, I think, they believe in promoting uniformity and dress code because they are aiming towards creating a more inclusive environment whereby individuals are judged based on their abilities rather than their religious beliefs. So these opponents of headscarves and educational institutions may argue that children are often children have impressionable mindsets, and therefore they are very easily influenced by societal norms and familial expectations regarding religious expression. And allowing headscarves in school may perpetuate certain gender stereotypes and limit opportunities for social integration and personal development. But in my opinion, I think it is important to recognize that the attitudes towards clothing, headscarves in particular, can vary significantly across cultures and communities. In some cultures, wearing a headscarf may be considered a cultural or a religious symbol, and even a symbol of empowerment or autonomy. While in others, it may be regarded as some kind of oppression or religious extremism. So it is important that we understand the cultural context and the individual motivations behind the wearing of a headscarf, because it is through that we would be able to address the complexities of this ongoing issue. Uh, this debate has been ongoing for quite some time now, and it only reflects deeper social tensions surrounding this issue of religious freedom, gender equality, cultural diversity, and so on and so forth, and also the role of the state in regulating individual expression. So, finding a balance between respecting individual rights and, on the other hand, maintaining social cohesion should be aimed at, notwithstanding all of the other challenges that are, of course, there within different societal setups.
Okay, ma'am, thank you. Since you have talked about the gender equality, regarding to that, I want to again return back to Dr. Gayatri Sampath and ask her about what are some of religious stereotypes that bothered you since you were born. And given a chance, how would you guide individuals who may be challenging or questioning gender stereotypes deeply rooted in their religious upbringing from different background they can be?
Sure. So, many of, as I said in the beginning, that a lot of the stereotypes that we see are on because of interpretations of text. Okay. A close examination of our texts, whether it is the Vedas or the Puranas, have always respected the role of women. Okay. There has been no discrimination. In fact, all you need to do is walk into any temple, okay, and you will find that there is always a female consort with a male god. Okay. And the female consort is also embodied with certain powers, is a mystique in her right, is also worshipped independent of the male god. There is a term which is called as Ardhangini, which respects the yin and the yang, or the male, the masculine, and the feminine in all deities that are commonly worshipped. Okay. Uh, so that is as far as the worship part of it goes, the religion part of it goes. Where we see these stereotypes are more in terms of us lesser mortals, the humans. Okay. Which is where we have actually missed the point what our the people that we pray to, or the gods and goddesses that we pray to, the pantheon that we pray to, was actually telling us we've missed the point there. So, what I would like to say to people who would like to challenge these stereotypes is, don't be misled by the interpretations or the translations of dharma or of the way of life that you see. Go back to the source document, and most of us are, doing some kind of research or the other, and you would endorse that going back to the source document is possibly the answer to all the evils that we face when we are dealing with data. Okay. So, in a data led approach, go back to the source documents. The source documents are very clear that the male, the masculine, and the feminine coexist. Okay. They each have their roles to play. There is no stereotyping here, because Hindu mythology, Hindu history is replete with many examples of women, as going back to the Vedic period, of people who have worked shoulder by shoulder with their counterparts, whether they were ascetics or saints or philosophers, warriors. Okay. So there were no stereotypes in our history. Okay. These stereotypes are the ones that man has created, and to challenge them we have to go back. And when I say man, I don't mean the gender man, I mean society as a man, because I think women are also guilty at some parts of accepting these stereotypes, because partially conditioning, partially the fear of being branded a rebel. There is a lot of societal pressure, let's not belittle that. But yes, go back to the source document. The source document is empowering. It sets out the fact that there is no distinction between a man and a woman, and both have an equal and an important role to play in the welfare of mankind.
Thank you, ma'am. And surely the suggestion of yours that go back to the source and go back to the roots is the only answer to all of the patriarchal norms you are questioning. Ma'am, my second question to Nazneen ma'am is, what role does the family and peers play in negotiating the gender stereotypes enforced by religion? It would be wonderful if you share your personal stories in this context. How do you decide that liberties to take and what liberties it is to take and when to stop it?
Yeah, so I think we started off this conversation on that note itself, where families play a very, very vital role in defining our perceptions and our conditioning towards these stereotypes, right? We actually do not care much about the society or what our neighbors or what our community at large is thinking. It's basically the two, three, four people you are living with and growing up, what they think actually matters, and that is what actually develop your perception. So that's like my first answer to your question, that the family plays, I think they play the foundational role in developing these perception towards any kind of stereotyping. And I think I've already shared a personal story, but I would like to take this opportunity and highlighting one of my experiences, which might not be with my family, but I often wondered why this thing is happening in a community. So I used to accompany my mother, my parents a lot in different kinds of majlis as a child during Muharram. And so majlis is basically a religious gathering. So there is, as we spoke, there is of course a preacher, a male preacher who will be giving out the discourse, and then there'll be there'll be two sections. One would be for males, the other would be for females. The male section would, of course, be quite nearer to where the preacher is seated, and the female section will be probably at the back of the hall, or maybe on the first or the second floor of the building. And this female section will be stuffed with the children. So the all the male, you see all the males sitting in peace, listening to the discourse, communicating and giving out their opinions, whereas the females in at the back of the hall or right on the top of the building, they would be busy with the children running here and there, who are shouting, crying. Some women will be nursing their children. It's a total chaos in that particular section. So you forget about it's very difficult to sit and listen to the discourse. And I think you also spoke about the education of women in one of the questions. So all of these are little things, I think, which are not paid attention to, but all of these things have a direct impact on the education of women, where women are not given the equal opportunity to engage in a simple discourse, in a simple religious discourse which is going on. Right, so that's one of my experiences, not a very pleasant experience, but that's one of my experiences that I would like to mention here. And as far as I think, you mentioned about when to take the liberties and when to stop. I believe that you should always take liberties as far as you know that you are right. But we must be sensible enough to understand that we will not be able to change the ways in which the world functions in a day. So you revolt, but you be sensible in not setting up your expectations very high. I think it's a gradual process and it's a continuous exchange.
Absolutely, ma'am. I also agree with you that your last sentence that it is a gradual process and it will take time, most probably. So, my second question to Stella ma'am is there is an argument that in many countries women are more tend to be religious than men because they are less likely to have a job outside their home. So, in spite of the fact that women remain in religious master, what are your thoughts regarding the same?
So the statement about women being more religious than men due to their lower participation in the workforce and greater involvement in domestic activities is a rather complex one. From a very young age, there are some individuals who are socialized into specific gender roles that go on to dictate their behavior and beliefs gradually. And there are different setups where women are taught to prioritize family, community, and religious activities, whereas on the other hand, men are encouraged to focus more on the world outside, on their career, on their financial success. So, this differential process of socialization can, of course, it definitely contributes to differences in religious participation between these two genders as well. Now, religious communities can often provide, social support networks, especially for women who may feel more isolated due to being limited within their circumscribed roles inside the household. So, participation in these religious activities can provide the scope for these women to experience a sense of belonging, community, and emotional support. Particularly where these traditional gender roles are very strongly emphasized. For some women, religion may actually provide a sense of spiritual fulfillment, purpose, and identity outside of their domestic roles. So, engaging in different religious practices and rituals can therefore go on to sort of offer a sense of meaning and empowerment to them. Uh, uh, Especially if I said if their opportunities for self-expression are limited, or if their autonomy is curtailed to a certain extent. So for them, religion is a means of sort of seeking spiritual fulfillment and personal growth in their lives. So religious activities, prayer, meditation, worship, all of these can provide avenues for reflecting upon their own selves, for self-discovery, for transcendence, that are not necessarily tied to any sort of workforce participation. Uh, in many societies, women have also played central roles in religious traditions and practices throughout history. Women's involvement in religion predates modern sort of workforce dynamics, and it has been influenced by different cultural norms, by religious teachings, by social expectations, and so on. There are women who have been leaders in religious communities. They have served as spiritual guides, as educators, as caregivers. But the assumptions that with fewer demands on their time from employment outside the home uh, is, I don't think, absolutely correct. It is, of course, very much problematic because the fact that women may have more opportunities to participate in religious gatherings, ceremonies, or community events is only left to our critical interpretation. I think it is essential to approach this issue, very critically in order to avoid any kind of generalization, because not all women are homogeneously more religious than men. The relationship between gender, religiosity, and workforce participation can vary significantly across cultures, religions, and individual circumstances. So, attributing higher levels of religious involvement solely because of their domestic roles oversimplifies this complex interplay of social, cultural, and economic factors that influence religious behavior. So women's religious involvement can also be sort of influenced by a multitude of factors, involving their own individual experiences. Many women are deeply committed to their religious faith for reasons completely unrelated to their employment status. So, as gender roles and expectations evolve, patterns of religious participation do too. Increased numbers of women are entering the workforce now, of course, and they're pursuing higher education, which may have reshaped traditional gender dynamics within educational institutions and religious institutions, and which may have contributed to shift in patterns of religious engagement. So, while I think women's workforce participation may influence some aspects of the religious involvement, but it would again be overtly simplistic to attribute this inclination on the part of women towards religious involvement, because they cannot be solely limited to, I mean, participation in religion cannot be understood as an activity which only sort of can be facilitated by limited participation in the workforce outside the home. So this religious participation or engagement with religion on the part of women is a very multifaceted concept, and it is shaped by, as I mentioned a while ago, by a complex interplay of several factors: individual, cultural, social, and historical, that extend far beyond their employment status.
If I might just add on to the point that Stella was
Sure,
making, Gayatri, do I have the time to add on to that?
yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am.
I think just building on to what Stella said, one of the key reasons why also women's participation in religion is found to be a little higher is religion itself. Okay. Because many religions promote themselves as a safe haven. Okay. They provide a sense of security. They provide a anchor, etc. So that's also one of the reasons why. That this is the reason why women traditionally who have been viewed as a lesser sex or have not had the representation in society, religion also offers them a way to find themselves, a way for them to find their safe spaces. So that could be another reason, adding on to the interplay that Stella spoke about of different factors. I think one of the key factors is religion itself, which drives uh, you know one section of the society to find solace within religious practices.
Okay. Uh, this the women's involvement in the workforce or the workplace. This again a very generalized concept, and we can derive different meaning from this. As Taylor ma'am also has said, and you have also said, there is two different facet of this multifaceted concept. It is. So, this very concept, that is women's role in the workplace, I want to ask you, Gayatri ma'am, since you are a mentor and educator and also writer, so drawing from your extensive experience in the corporate strategy, have you observed any gender stereotyping influencing leadership roles or workplace dynamics in the workplace?
Where would you want me to start? So, I think when we talk about the glass ceiling, it's very much a reality. Uh, I've been in the workforce now for close to 3 decades. I have been fortunate to have an upbringing where I was believed that the world is mine to take, and it's up to me to take charge of whatever I needed to do. So I've never faced a challenge in terms of aspiration, but in the workforce, for instance, even with the most progressive colleagues, even in the most progressive of organizations, the first stereotype starts kicking in when you get married. Okay, the moment a married you show your change in your marital status, your discounting as a serious candidate has already started happening. Okay, the next discounting happens when you give birth. Okay, the moment you go on maternity leave, even if it is a minimal maternity leave, I mean, there are a lot of stories of powerful women or leaders who have come back within 15 days or who've brought a newborn to their office and continue to deliver. But that is the next level of discounting that you face in terms of not your candidature, but your aspirations and your ambitions get discounted. And therefore, you start getting taken less seriously because people wonder whether you're a one horse pony, whether you just, maybe work for the next deadline or the next promotion, and are you really in it for the long haul? And that does play a big picture. It plays a big role in terms of how you get uh, taken in the workforce. Progression, I've seen a lot of women, and especially as an educator now, I see a lot of my younger female students working very hard to blend in with the male, because according to them that is the way that they will be heard in the workforce. Okay, and sometimes I really do feel like telling them that you are a woman and be proud of it. You don't have to behave like a man. Okay, you have so many things going for you, possibly more than men, because you have focus, you can multitask, all the standard research which says that women work better than men in certain circumstances. So you don't really need to subordinate your gender just to be heard in the workforce. But this is where the conditioning comes in. Okay, where if you are not part of the the after party gang, then your credibility as a team player is questioned. If you are not part of the chai sutta gang, then you may not get taken very seriously. So these are some stereotypes that women unfortunately still have to face, even though the number of women participating in the workforce is on the increase. Stereotypes do prevail, and it's going to take sustained, serious effort to break these molds that women have been forced to fit into.
Yes, ma'am. This has been a serious issue that whenever a woman enter into an office or in any workplace, that the force of the concept of blending into the man's world, it still going on.
Yeah.
So, Nazneen ma'am, my question to you is: as people grow and expand their identities, they find clarity in their faith and opinions. How has your journey as an engineer, writer, and the creator of Wind Fables influenced your relationship with religion? Have you been able to forgive the gender stereotypes and limitation imposed by society on the basis of your religious identity?
So Joyashree, basically, if you ask me about my relationship with my religion, I think it has evolved. It is still evolving, and I'm still in the phase to understand things. But if you ask me today, um, I think that I'm at a point where I understand that I do not need to accept everything and anything that is written or being preached. I think I stand tall as a Muslim today because I know that I have the right to question and also to reject. And this is not only for a woman per se, but also for any human who can think, right? And if you, sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Okay. My second one is: have you been able to forgive the gender
Yeah.
stereotypes and limitation? That is.
So, honestly, there's nothing to forgive. then there's nothing to forgive. I think, there has been, I don't remember the philosopher's name, but there has been a saying which I have read somewhere, that the world or the society first asks you who you are. If you're not able to answer who you are, then the world tells you who you are. So if we have all our answers in place, and if we are on the right track, I think there's nothing to forgive. And to be very honest, I've had a lot of support from my, not only from my peer, from my family, but also from my community, in every different aspect. Probably, I am an engineer today because I had a lot of support. And when I say support, not just like mental support, a hardcore physical support from my community, who actually supported me in my education. And I know so many women from my community who are doing great in academics, medicine, science, in sports, and you name a field and they are at the top of their game. And the community takes a lot of pride in them, and it is ready to support them in any way. So honestly, as I said earlier, that it's a constant exchange, and there's nothing to forgive anyone.
Now, as you said that community take a lot of pride in them, but they take pride in them once they're famous, not in their struggling phase, obviously.
Well, you are right. Partially, you're right. Maybe the struggles could be a little bit more as compared to the male counterpart. But in my personal opinion, if you ask for something, if you ask for something, then probably you will get what you ask for. So you got to take that first initiative to ask for help. And I think people are there. Most of the people are good, irrespective of the religion, community, and these are all, I don't know. Terms that we've formed. It's as a society, I think, as a world, I think most of the people are good, and they would want to help the other person, irrespective of their gender or backgrounds.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Stella, ma'am, in your studies, have you come across gender stereotyping within religious narratives? And if so, how do the stereotypes manifest in literature, particularly in children's literature?
I'm not really, I don't have the authority to speak on religious narratives. But since I've worked primarily on Bengali children's literature in the 19th and early 20th century, so I'll just speak a little on that. The history of gendering in children's literature goes, I mean, in Bengali children's literature actually goes back to its roots in the 19th century, where different socio-cultural developments had spurred Bengal in the drive towards colonial modernity. So, striving to free itself from the grip of a foreign monopoly on the one hand, and then also trying to achieve some sort of establish some kind of autonomy on the other. Native literature uh, in Bengal was gradually beginning to achieve increasing popularity, especially as we tend to move towards the era of nationalist awakening. The intervention of the Brahmo reformers in these pedagogical practices also meant that certain legitimized and morally sanitized ideologies on gender, identity, sexuality, various other social cultural values, ideals, etc., were propagated amongst the potential readers. So, gender discourses started infiltrating the realm of popular children's literature since the early traces of its advent, and it can be understood as very consciously influencing the formative consciousness of the young readers with this definite idea, agenda in mind as the time period gradually progressed towards the nationalist era. So while there were writings on the one hand which were specifically targeting a male readership, and these writings championed this ideal of Bengali masculinity, it gradually came on to be understood that women had a very limited role to play in this fervor towards nationalist awakening, and they had to remain content within derivative roles, be it within intellectual sort of pursuits or other physical conquests that were that celebrated sort of masculinist sort of victory and masculinist ideals. So these gender stereotypes have remained widely prevalent in Bengali children's literature, and they have reinforced traditional roles and expectations for boys and girls. For example, if you look at different adventure stories, Bengali adventure stories, you'll find that the boys have been portrayed as brave, outgoing, resilient, and displaying fortitude and physical strength. Whereas on the other hand, girls are usually absent from such considerations altogether. They are not represented as characters at all. They are not present within the narrative at all, and even if they are present, they are depicted as extremely vulnerable, passive, and in need of protection. So there are several works that remain a testimony to sort of such considerations. Then especially when you're talking about religious narratives, if you look at the turn of the 19th century, which was regarded as the golden age of Bengali children's literature, we find that in the years following, the Swadeshi upheaval and this sort of the partition of Bengal and the Swadeshi movement, we find various folk Bengali religious narratives being translated and sort of adapted in a much more diluted and simplified form for juvenile readers, for child readers to read and understand and to emulate these inspiring ideals in their day-to-day lives. So if you look at such portrayals in children's literature at the turn of the century, you'll find that on the one hand we find these larger than life male characters on the one hand, uh, characters from Ramayana, Mahabharata, and various other epics. These epic retellings for children, where we have these brave, daunting, and courageous men being portrayed on the one hand, and then we have these female characters who are shown as extremely feminine. They are they aspire towards being very docile, very chaste. They almost want to be submissive and to be sort of told what to do and what not to do. So I find that these while these translations or these adaptations of these folk or religious narratives were being done, they were done with a definite conscious agenda, of course, on the part of these reformers or these writers, because they wanted the children to sort of follow these ideals and to mold themselves, their subjectivities, in such a way that it would contribute towards the championing of their own ideologies in the long run, especially if we consider the larger nationalist awakening and the sort of gradual progressing towards the freedom struggle that happened towards the early sort of 20th century. So yeah, that is something that I've noticed.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Children's literature is also one of my favorite genre, and since you have talked about the Bengali children's literature, the I can remember the few instances that in the Thakumar Jhuli or Pandav Goinda, they took a very long time to portray the female protagonist. There are few examples of the female protagonist or the female leader of the group. There are always the male protagonist or the male leader they portray in the children's literature. So it took a quite long from the 19th century to 20th or 21st century to portray the female as the leader of the group.
So yes,
My
there are
next question.
these two recurring stereotypes that you find in these folklores or these fairy tales. On the one hand, they are the female characters are either the damsels in distresses, or on
Huh.
the other hand, they are like the witches or the
Hmm.
demoness, the ogress, who goes on to sort of wreak havoc and completely disrupt the order of the kingdom. So again, the very idea of femininity itself was very problematic. The way it has been depicted and portrayed through these children's books, there is no sort of balance or reconciliation or anything in between. There are these two extremities that stand, and they sort of keep on getting recurrently portrayed in such works.
Okay. My next question is again to all of you, and I will came one by one. Ma'am, Gayatri ma'am, so first to you that when triple talaq was banned in India, men and women across communities had come forward to support the policy. Do you think uniting against religious stereotypes could be easier than achieving communal harmony? Also, jokes about how can women come together to target the breaking down of gender stereotypes within various religious communities and contribute to fostering a positive change? How do you see it? Hmm.
So let me address the second part of the question that you raised, which is about how can women support
Sure.
each other.
Hmm.
I think the very fact that we have three women here and you moderating it is a good way of actually coming forward and creating a community which is having a dialogue. And what we just demonstrated is a very healthy dialogue where we spoke about the fact that we are not talking about fighting against injustice. We are only going to call out saying that, look, there is a narrative that needs to be changed. Okay. Unfortunately, what happens is because of the way in which women's roles have evolved, such platforms have been few and far in between in the past. Okay. But I think the very fact that literacy rates are increasing, the very fact that there is a lot more awareness about women's histories, about the role of gender in many of the activities, there is a lot of questioning around gendered roles, gendered attributes. There is greater participation of women in decision making, okay, empowerment, all of these are happening. I think these are what will lead to more platforms where women can come together, because obviously even if every woman challenges, there is still society at large which will need to undergo a lot of change in its attitude and its approach. And yes, a collective would definitely help. I'm not sure whether I would like to speak about a particular religious aspect in this, because I think stereotypes exist across all religions. And we are talking about womankind, and we are talking about the feminine. I think for that, women across all walks of life, we have to jump across religion, across caste, across income barriers, to really make the kind of change that we are talking about, to break the stereotypical mold that we've been cast in. It's a larger movement which spans all these barriers. And I think
Uh,
platforms like these would go a long way in creating that movement.
Okay, so ma'am, also you have one of your answer you have stated that maternity leave and also I will mention the period leaves, all this. So how will women would overcome these stereotypes in the gender or religious basis? So should womankind come together or also we will take help from the mankind also? I mean not mankind, I mean men also like all.
So if we go back to the anthology of the analogy that I gave of maternity leave. Okay. Right now we are still at a stage, science has not evolved where children are born on their own or in labs, right? So we still need the male and the female to procreate. Okay. So to that extent they're already united in procreation. Okay. Now we are only talking about what roles and what are the requirements from a physical point of view. Okay, if there is a recovery like any other injury, you have to give recovery leave. Okay, so it's part of what your body is equipped for, its physiology. Okay, it has very little to do with mental makeup. Here we are talking about physiology. Okay, and I think we need to de-link the two when we have these debates. Okay, so menstruation leave or maternity leave, these are physiological issues. Okay, and it's akin to any other uh, line of thinking we use for any physiological issue. I think it has to be kept distinct from an emotional and a psyche point of view. There's no gender discussion around it, so we need to separate the gender from the physiology. And I think that more than a man, I think the woman is best placed to argue this case for herself. Why do we need men to argue the case for our bodies? It's women who have to control the narrative. Okay. And I think societal change will have to be led by women, because you know you best.
Hmm.
Why cede the power to somebody else to claim that they know you better than somebody else?
Sure, ma'am. So, Nazneen ma'am, how do you see this triple talaq when it is banned in India? It's quite a long time, not quite a long, but since the main women across communities had come forward still to support the policy. So, what is your view on all of this?
So, as far as my understanding of this triple talaq is concerned, what I was told, so I have gone to madrasa for a very long time until I think I was 12 or 13 years of age, and I have gone to madrasa. And this is my learning through madrasa and also through my family, that men are actually told to, in fact, men are forced to ask for talaq thrice because their judgment is not trusted. Whereas and you just cannot say talak talak talak, and that is, you're done with it. That's not how the narrative works. It's like you have to ask for a talak, then you have to wait, give a particular time, that is I think 30 days, then you ask for a second talak, that also in the presence of a witness, and then you ask, if it's not working, then you ask for a third talak. Whereas if it comes for women, women are empowered to ask for khula just once, because their instinct and their, if a woman is asking for something, she has thought through it, and that's why she's asking. That is what my understanding and my teaching of this entire talak narrative is. It has been misused in different ways and misinterpreted by different people. That's a different subject of discussion, and I would not go into that. But this is my understanding, and this is how the community in which I function, in which I live, it functions that way. um, and I agree with Dr. Gayatri Sampath to answer your the second part of your question, largely with Dr. Gayatri in everything that she has mentioned. Um, one thing that I would like to say, when she was talking about the workplace, the equality or the equity to be given at the workplace for men and women, uh, sometimes I feel that women themselves. Let's say, just for an example, nowadays we have a lot of women's day celebration at a lot of workplaces going on. um, I'm very uncomfortable, to be honest, with this with these kinds of celebrations of, celebrating women, because when you say that you got to celebrate women's day, means there is something wrong.
Mm.
Why to celebrate that just for a day? There's nothing to celebrate about it. And when you say that there is, you want equality, when you say that okay, there has to be equality, it means that there is no equality, and that's why you have to do all these extra things to prove that there is equality. So, and also, I think, I strongly believe that we need to involve all the genders in this dialogue. It's a great thing that four of us are discussing about this subject together on this platform, but I think we need to include all the genders, not just male. In an inclusive world, we cannot leave even the third gender behind. So I think we got to involve everyone and have a healthy positive dialogue, do the right thing, set the right examples, and create paths for our fellow women to follow. And I think that would be enough to probably break the stereotypes in the future, in the near future.
Okay, ma'am. So, Stella ma'am, how do you think that how can women come together to target the breaking down of gender stereotypes within various religious communities? And also, as Nazneen ma'am has spoken, that there is this Women's Day celebration at every workplace nowadays. So, is there a Men's Day also celebration that is in the workplace? They are like handle goodies and all.
To answer the second part of the question, no, I have not seen that in any institution that I've been a part of till date. Despite having Women's Day celebrations, annually, we do not have any consideration given separately for a day to be, sort of cordoned off to celebrate men and whatever they do or whatsoever it might be. So I think that is something that, as Ms. Nazeen very rightly pointed out, I think that is a very problematic aspect of wanting to celebrate women when at the same time you're also justifying this striving towards equality. Now, coming to the first part, I think my co-panelists have covered the most part of what was there to be said. There are various ways in which women can actually come together to break down gender stereotypes within different religious communities, and can also contribute to positive changes within society. Uh, I think it begins with challenging patriarchal interpretations of not just religious texts but any other texts and subtexts. So whenever I feel that interpretations or texts or narratives which perpetuate gender stereotypes and discrimination should be sort of critically examined, and women can actually come together to sort of advocate a more inclusive and egalitarian sort of interpretation of different texts and contexts. And I think this would contribute to the dignity of and equality of all individuals beyond the considerations of gender. And as Dr. Gayatri very rightly pointed out during her interpretation of, or her response to this question, that we need to sort of establish certain safe spaces for dialogues, because until and unless we have open and honest conversations about societal roles, about gender roles in society, about societal expectations, about communal expectations of gender within religious contexts, then this very problem of gender stereotyping cannot be combated. Women's groups, support networks, community organizations, all of these can actually be formed to sort of serve as platforms for sort of sharing experiences, to engage in dialogue, dialogic discourses, and challenging stereotypes, and fostering understanding amongst each other, and encouraging people from other genders to also come in as allies in order to fight against gender discrimination, and to sort of ward off any kind of stereotypical generalization, is also a very effective way, I feel. Women can not only work with men, but also people from other sort of gender orientations within their communities, in order to promote gender equality, and also challenge harmful attitudes and behaviors, thereby fostering a much more respectful and sort of balanced dynamic within various relationships. Women's leadership, within religious institutions, community organizations, and various other spaces should also be encouraged, supported, and promoted, because women leaders can actually serve as role models, and they can be advocates for gender equality, thereby going on to dismantle different barriers to against participation of women, or it can actually facilitate with the agency of women when it comes to decision making, or when it comes to actually implementing something effective within various sort of backgrounds. um, and I also feel that since we are talking about religious narratives and religious contexts in today's discussion, I think collaborated work amongst women coming from diverse religious backgrounds, as I and my co-panelists today have come here to sort of talk together, to discuss together about this topic. So I think such collaborative activities can actually address common challenges, and sort of promote shared values of equality and justice. Interfaith dialogue and collaboration can actually create opportunities for sort of learning, for mutual support, and for collective action, in order to challenge gender stereotypes across religious boundaries. So, women-led initiatives, awareness campaigns, educational programs, talks like these, various other advocacy efforts can actually have a meaningful effort, not just at the grassroots level, but can also contribute to broader social change. So,
Absolutely, ma'am. And also agreeing to both of you, then the Gayatri ma'am and Stella ma'am, also Nazneen ma'am, that this panel is itself an example that you are in your respective field acing your community in your community. So talking about it freely and also creating a safe place for women is can be a solution, maybe a positive change towards it, a little step. So thereby I concluded and thanks everyone, Nazneen ma'am, Dr. Gayatri Sampath and Stella ma'am, for the very insightful conversation and for your time in this evening. Tell Me Your Story calls for submission on the writing from Gender Stereotyping. Registration are also open for masterclass on social media strategy for new or aspiring authors. We hope to hear from you soon. Till then, stay well, stay happy, stay together. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
thank you all.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Real pleasure to meet
Goodbye.
you.